All right, everyone. Welcome back for another round. Tonight we are going to be talking about Mazinger with our very special guest, Tom Franck.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can't
Unfortunately,
see me.
we can't see you. I'll just let everyone know that Tom is quite a handsome man. So when you do finally see him, be ready. Be ready to swoon.
He's actually 9 feet tall.
Looks like a Greek god. Steve, welcome tonight, and Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
Steve, I don't know if you know Tom or not. Tom's been a drink and draw guy since almost the beginning, right, Tom? When did you first start coming?
I want to say 2013, maybe earlier.
All right.
Maybe 2011, somewhere in there.
Excellent.
When did it start?
Officially, I think in 2005, but we didn't get to Casey's until, I don't know, 5 years later.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. For everyone out there, Tom is a professional stand-up comedian and a comic book artist, and he is here tonight to share Mazinger Z with us and basically kind of
teach us about robots.
Teach us about giant robots.
Stephen, where are you on Mazinger Z?
Where am I? I think I don't know. I mean, the research has shown me just how little it turns out that I do know. I think the biggest exposure I've had is there was that anime from around 2001 or 2002 of Mazinger.
Right.
That I feel like I watched that extensively, so that's like my biggest thing. But then I realized that I'm like, oh wait, Mazinger not Mazinger,
right.
So what's the connection? But it still is Go Nagai, right?
Right. He didn't have a whole lot to do with Mazinger with that one that you're talking about, but it is his characters, and it was definitely done with a whole bunch of homage to the original spirit, not only of the anime but of the manga. I mean,
it was in a very retro, for around 2000. It felt like it was trying very much to look like a 1970s anime or late 60s manga.
Right.
So not only does Tom know quite a bit about the anime and the manga and giant robots in general, he is a huge collector and of not only toys but the art. And also, you got to meet Go Nagai, right?
But Tom, maybe you could show us your collection.
I actually set up some stuff behind me.
We had big plans, everybody. We were going to look at the whole collection.
There you go.
Holy crap! That's you with Go Nagai.
Yes.
How was that? How did you arrange that meeting? Nice.
He was in town for Anime Expo. And a friend of mine was trying to sort of, schmooze him to do a project. That project didn't happen, but he wanted me to bring some of my collection and surprise him with it. And, one of the things that I'm known for is one of the first two enemy robots that Mazinger Z fought was Garada K7. It was the two-headed one, SM2, and Garada K7 was the skull-headed one. And the Jumbo Machinder toy of Garada K7 is considered one of the rarest toys in the world.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And it took me, I looked for it for 13 years, and I found it, and I had him sign the foot of it at that. But I was worried that, my hunt for Garada K7, I'll post a link to it, because I have talked about it before, was considered a big deal and still is considered a big deal. If he came in, he's like the only person on the earth who could go, yeah, ho hum, I have 3 of those at home. Like he could very easily have been not impressed.
Right.
But I said, what's your collection of toys? And he said, I focus so much on making manga at the time that I didn't care about the toys at all.
Wow.
And I didn't get any of them, and I deeply regret it.
One of the things, so I didn't know basically any of, like when you said you wanted to do Mazinger Z, I'm like, okay, like I don't know anything about it. And doing some research, I had no idea that before Mazinger, there was the idea of a pilot in a robot just didn't exist.
Right. So, with anime and manga, you've got Osamu Tezuka, and you've got, Astro Boy, Mighty Atom, Metropolis, Phoenix, he's just the godfather of manga and anime.
Right.
And he drew plenty of robots, including beautiful ones, but even sort of very large, giant robots weren't piloted by humans. And then you had Mitsuteru Yokoyama, who created Tetsujin 28, which came to the US as Gigantor, and Giant Robo, which was, a manga and a live action show, which came to the US as Johnny Sacco's Flying Robot.
I remember that.
And then in 1972, well, there's a couple things you've got to put into perspective, because the super robot genre is...
Putting things into perspective is difficult for some of us, particularly if we don't have vanishing points. But I'm sorry, please continue.
That's why we're artists. Right. So the 70s had, if you look at the data of census, results, there were more kids than ever before. Gen X, the children of baby boomers, like high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, you had to keep building more and more of them in the 70s because there were just so many damn kids. I mean, and then you get to the 80s and the 90s, and there's this sort of regression of schools closing down, high schools with, north and south become one high school. So you had all these kids in the 70s, more than ever before. And the other thing about the 70s that you've got to put into perspective is video games weren't really a thing yet.
Right.
I mean, Atari comes out in 1977. So you have this giant, huge, massive demographic of kids. And part of the reason that the super robot genre took off so much is because of the zeitgeist of those two things. So Mazinger Z, Go Nagai gets the idea to have a piloted robots. He creates Mazinger Z. And there was an animation strike going on at Toei around the time. So if you look at the quality of Mazinger Z's TV show, especially in the first, season or two, and also Devilman, it's the animation itself is not incredibly great. Stephen, I know you're a big fan of Gatchaman, which went head to head with Mazinger Z on TV, and Mazinger Z crushed it in the ratings. But just the quality of the animation that Tatsunoko Studios was doing at the time was much better.
Yeah.
And it just shows you the power of this concept that Go Nagai had for super robots that were piloted by, mostly younger people. Koji Kabuto is a teenager in this. He's going to high school.
Right. Well, it's pretty amazing because it's one of those things where if you're me and Jeff's age, right, because of the timing as you're describing, we grew up in a world where there were giant robots that had people in them. And so it's strange to have that thing where it doesn't occur to you like, oh wait, someone had to invent that concept. It didn't, like before Siegel and Schuster, there was no superheroes. And fascinating that the first one is still the most famous,
absolutely.
And I guess, and true with this too, really,
So, the link that I sent you for the featurette, while these TV shows were taking off, and the Japanese were very sort of not full of pride in racing to second place. There were not just Go Nagai creations with Get a Robo G, Jeeg, Grandizer. There were dozens of other animated shows coming out every year about super robots. It was a giant phenomenon. So as this was exploding, the toy market was kind of changing as well. So the reason, the plot of Mazinger Z is he is up against Dr. Hell, who has sort of found these ancient robots.
Such a great bad guy name.
Yeah. To try and take over the world. And Koji's grandfather was on an expedition with Dr. Hell, and they found these robots, and Dr. Hell took them over, and then he has them fight Mazinger Z. But the advantage that Mazinger Z has is he's created from something called Chogokin, which is super combination alloy. And so he's basically invincible with this, with what he's made out of. So he's able to defeat the, they're called Kikaiju, which is sort of robotic monsters.
Anime adamantium, basically, that he has.
Exactly. So at the time, Popey, the toy company, which was sort of an offshoot of Bandai, came up with a marketing idea of making a bunch of different toys from Mazinger Z. There's the giant 2-foot tall jumbo Machinders, which came to the U.S. as the Shogun Warriors, but then there was the smaller metal ones that were made out of die-cast metal. So the concept was that they named the brand after the metal that Mazinger was named out of. So Chogokin toys were huge. It was just giant. So the idea was you were playing with toys made out of the same indestructible metal as your hero robot.
And I'm sure children tested that theory.
I remember when I was a kid, I think I must have been in 7th grade. I had one of the die-cast Shogun Warrior robots. That thing was indestructible.
Yeah.
I remember just being very jealous of the kids that, like, my parents did fine in terms of keeping me flush with toys, but I was never, I had to just drool over other kids' Shogun Warriors at their house. I was never allowed to get one of my own. I think they were a little bit too big and expensive. I think I managed to get a lot of Mego superhero action figures, but I never reached the score.
Which are worth a lot now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had.
But I mean, you're lamenting that you didn't get one of the, 8 Shogun Warrior toys that was here, but you have to understand just how small a subset that was of the original toy lines.
Right.
The big 2-foot tall ones and the die-cast metal ones. It goes on and on and on. So while the Mazinger Z TV show was, and all these super robot shows were becoming popular, Dynamic Productions, Go Nagai's company, and Toei Animation also made a series of featurettes that were released in theaters. So it was Mazinger Z meets Devilman, which was Go Nagai's other popular creation at the time.
Right.
And then this one, the second one was Mazinger Z versus the Great General of Darkness and Kuku Daishogun. And that the way that I saw this is, the Shogun Warriors, when they came out, sort of the history of toys and cartoons is that in the US, these weren't character toys. These were just toys that looked cool that kids went to buy. Whereas in Japan, these were beloved, cartoon shows that you knew the backstories to.
Right.
So around 1980, Jim Terry took some of the super robot shows and created a show called Force 5, which was only shown in select markets. I saw it in Massachusetts, but it didn't do very well. And then in 85, they released Transor Z in the US, which was really sort of too late. And people weren't going to accept the crude animation from 1972 that was dealing with the Toei animation strike. So it didn't do very well. But in looking at the sort of comments from people looking forward to this episode, we're seeing a lot of international people, especially South America, Europe. The shows were translated in other parts of the world outside of the US and were gigantic there. Grandizer, which was a later Go Nagai show, is huge in Europe, where he's called Goldrake. It's huge in Arabic countries. I mean, just in France, just phenomenal ratings. And the super robot genre really took over the world in the 70s, and it's difficult to overstate that.
And so Go Nagai's his big three are Mazinger Z, Devilman, and Cutie Honey. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of people before that he had something called Shameless School, which was, kind of perverted teenagers. It really tame by today's standards, but it was pretty scandalous at the time, and it was a big hit. And then his next manga was called Mao Dante, which I think is brilliant. It's really worth checking out. And then he had Devilman, which is the manga is really considered his masterpiece. I think there's a manga about people who love Devilman, or about a character who loves the Devilman manga. So this one here is we're showing stills from the featurette that I had you watch, Mazinger Z versus Ankuku Daishogun. So this is not in continuity with the TV show. This is its own continuity, and this is sort of an alternate story showing the transition from Mazinger Z to Great Mazinger. And it's I saw it in the 80s, and we look at how easy it is to get anime now. I was part of something called the Boston Japanimation Society, and it would meet once a month, and I'd have to take the subway, take the T to MIT to watch anime on a Saturday for like 8 hours that were not subtitled and not dubbed. We were just watching stuff in Japanese on like 5th generation VHS tapes. So, you kids today, you have it good. I used to, travel uphill both ways to watch anime. And this wasn't actually shown there. If you brought blank VHS tapes, they would copy stuff for you, and you could pick them up next month. So I got this and, plugged it into my VHS, and I've never been the same since. Do you have any stills from the opening credits?
I
just an illegal bootlegging club, really.
Yeah,
Viewed through today's lens of.
So the opening credits for this are, children's pictures of Mazinger Z, which is really sort of fitting.
What a great idea!
Just how beloved the character was. I mean, kids really liked this. And the whole story that happens in this featurette is really kind of tough to watch, because it's Mazinger Z stop on that one there.
Right.
Okay. Getting the shit kicked out of him for the whole thing.
Right.
And it's really like watching your dad get beaten up.
Well, I just want to go, and I know I was scrolling through stuff, but I just wanted to.
Not sure how practical that helmet is, just FYI.
Yeah. So I just wanted to go back and point out some of the robots. So these robots are not just robots; they're almost kind of like alien robots, kaiju hybrids, right?
So by the time this story begins, Koji and Mazinger Z have defeated Dr. Hell. And
great design.
And the Kikaiju, the robot monsters.
Right.
And in this is the coming of a new enemy, Ankuku Daishogun, and his minions are called Sentoju, which are war beasts, which are these weird, as you say,
amazing design.
Hybrids of animation of organic living things and robots. Right. And they're really disturbing and chilling. A lot of a friend of mine, look at the weird faces that are
they're super creepy.
It's nightmare inducing.
He described Go Nagai design as unholy, which I think is very fitting. The way
very much, yeah. It's only kind of the garish colors that make you not quite completely.
They're demonic. They're terrifying.
Yeah, that's just. I mean, what I love too is there's something that one you're on right now, Jeff, is great too, because especially the one that we're looking at in the middle, there's still something very childlike about it. Like in the same way that when you're about 10, or 8 or 9, and you're just drawing and putting random things together,
right.
like like
Well,
it's like, let's have a mouth in the guy's stomach. Let's have a lizard face and these claws and dragon wings.
Yeah, in that shark one, there's a face there.
There's a face in the middle of it. Yeah,
shark face.
They're really kind of brilliant, and they're super horrifying. And this whole video is basically Mazinger Z getting his ass handed to him. And then Great Mazinger shows up and just cleans house.
It's really that mouth face there makes me wonder, because I think Kirby created Arnim Zola when he returned to Cap in the 70s, and it makes me wonder, in the late 70s, it makes me wonder if maybe he'd come across something like this at a convention or something, and it gave him the idea of doing that Arnim Zola, face in the tummy design.
Possible.
But, as soon as the first Sentoju laces into Mazinger Z and scratches its arm, and there's a big scar there, that's new territory, because Chogokin is supposed to be indestructible.
Right.
So it's really chilling to watch that. And the Sentoju talk. I mean, when Koji first, encounters them, he's like, what, the kaiju are talking now? Not understanding what these new things are that are about to really hand him his ass.
Yeah.
So this is like Wolverine's claws getting broken.
Well, and that acid dissolves the metal that before was totally indestructible.
Yes. It was, not a scratch on it, always shiny and new. And it's not pleasant to watch this. So in the story,
that Mazinger design is so great too, just because the ship is his brain. It goes right where the brain would be. That's just a great design touch.
And this is a great design. You don't see him too much, but Shogun, the thing that he's fighting is really impressive. I always love that. So when Mazinger Z, in this, so there's a little bit of backstory. So Mazinger Z was built by Koji's grandfather, Juzo Kabuto, and the son, that's the father, Kenzo Kabuto, and he's supposed to be dead, in some accident before Mazinger Z was created. So in this story, he's revealed to be the prophet, and he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, what's going on? 'Cause in that photo before, he's like, I'm going to go into battle and I'm going to fight the minions of Enkuku Daishogun, and I'm going to die. And my younger brother, who I just gave a blood transfusion to, is going to be the only surviving member of his family, not knowing that there's this new thing out to replace him, that his father, who's still alive, created. So there's a lot going on there. And by the end of, the last line, there he is. He reveals himself, and then he sends Great Mazinger into action. And you really feel for Koji, because this is so different than like the Transformers movie, where Optimus Prime dies and then gets replaced by Rodimus Prime. That's sort of the normal route in this.
Right.
Koji doesn't die. He's just replaced by something newer and shinier, and that is painfully relatable to all of us. Like, we're not usually replaced because we die. We get a younger brother who gets all of the attention. We get dumped, and a new boyfriend replaces us, or some worker at the office, or like in the art world. Sorry, you're off this book now. Some hotshot artist is replacing you.
Right.
So when that happens to Koji, who is not, in this final battle, Mazinger Z is not repaired yet. Koji has just given a blood transfusion. He's not at his best. Even at his best, he probably would still lose like this. But it's kind of chilling how impactful it is and how relatable it is for this new thing to come in and take over. And you really feel for Koji. You're like, well, what is he, chopped liver? What's going on? Who is this guy who was built by his own father? It really is kind of haunting.
It's and also that
Look. The sun is literally shining on the
Right.
thing that's going to replace you.
It's a great shot. Yeah. It's a great shot. And then he just flies away afterwards.
Yeah. And he calls after him like shame, you know?
Yeah.
Stone Monkey, yeah, I love cutie hunting as well. Just looking at our comments. That's a great, that 2000, there's that, Tom, there's that really cool 2004, I think, Gynax cutie hunting movie that then they also like made in conjunction with that live action.
Yes.
That was pretty great. I think that's, I guess that would, I guess I jumped big into the Go to Guy pool in the early 2000s and then have not been back, sadly. But
that there was Shin Mazinger Z, which sort of retold the story. I don't know, somewhere 2008, maybe later, which is excellent. It's worth checking out.
That is a sad, haunting image for the end of your movie.
Well, I mean, that's just
it's like
beaten up.
It's like the end of Logan, you know.
Right.
It's like, okay.
So Tom, what happens next? Like after this episode, and this is sort of bridges the Mazinger Z to Great Mazinger. Does Great Mazinger just go on to be its own show?
Yes, that Mazinger Z ran for 92 episodes. Great Mazinger ran for 56 episodes, and at the end of that run, Koji like goes away to study, and he comes back and reunites with his father at the end, like in I don't know, episode 51, 52, somewhere in there. And Tetsuya, who pilots Great Mazinger, gets really jealous and is being a jerk. And you've got this really awkward sort of paternal love triangle going on. But Koji wound up returning in Grandizer, and he would fly this dinky little flying saucer that he built himself. I don't know if you know Grandizer. It's like the robot fits inside of a what's called the spacer, but it looks like a flying saucer. It was called UFO Robot Grandizer, Robo Grandizer. That
right there is a great image. No, is that the image you're putting up right now, Jeff? Is that from?
That's not. That's just like showing the franchise of Mazinger.
Yeah, that's just
gotcha. Yeah,
that's Dr. Hell and Baron Arusha.
Who's the great purple robot with the stuff coming out of the side of his head?
That's Garada K7. That's the rarest toy in the world.
That's an amazing design.
Yeah,
wow.
It's very, very cool. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is just how much the whole giant robot, this idea that technology will defeat monsters, this idea that that you can build, like that science is the answer. I think it's a really interesting thing to have be happening in the 70s.
Right. I mean, it sort of makes sense. You know, it's sort of an evolution of, the kaiju era of radiation and, nuclear warfare creating monsters, and then technology being the answer to fight that.
Also, one of the things that I thought was really great about the snippets I've watched and the episodes I've been able to pick up on is like their action, like the interpersonal stuff was always, it was part of the story. But the episodes really revolved around the cool stuff the robot could do, like the rocket fist and the drilling missiles and the photon beams. He had so many cool ways to fight. Like, and I don't remember ever seeing anything like that before.
Sure. And that's part of the appeal of, watching week after week is that, what new weapon is he going to get this week? Mm-hmm. How is he going to be upgraded? And, that was a thing, especially there's another show, a little bit later called Guy King, where it was like a space dragon and the skull would form like a humanoid robot. But there was a big sort of super weapon arms race in that, where he just kept getting more and more stuff.
Right. And just how much this this series and these ideas influenced everything after them, from Power Rangers to even like the secret base with the vehicle underneath from the what was it, the Thunderbirds.
Yes,
That was all kind of
Thunderbirds
the
was a
same.
little earlier, I think.
Oh yeah.
Well, what are
60s.
I mean, and like Tom, where do you know where is that convention in an anime of like Japanese hero characters announcing what they're doing? Does that kind of come out of Go Nagai and this stuff? Like,
I think so.
Jeff showed us a thing, where I think earlier, breast beam, or something like that.
Exactly.
But
well, I used to do a bit about that in my stand-up, where the reason that they're doing that is simply that it's a fun thing to do.
Sure.
In
right.
everyday life.
I mean, right? Because I guess.
How are you looking?
Right. As we know, it's generally when fighting someone not a great idea to announce your intention and let your opponent know what you're about to do. But it would be ultimately extremely satisfying to do, just roundhouse punch, and then,
exactly.
and then punch a guy.
It's fun to watch. But,
oh yeah.
In looking at older anime, when you're dealing with robots and spaceships, it's very much divorced from the way that we look at it today, because everything is done in 3D.
Right.
Everything is animated in 3D. And then even if it's made to look hand-drawn, it's traced over and you can tell. Every spaceship, every car, they're not going to draw it by hand. And, but when you watch anime from the 70s, it's like you watch Space Cruiser Yamato and you got this fleet of spaceships making a turn. You can feel the elbow grease that they had to, spin this stuff and make all the details consistent.
Absolutely.
It gives you a headache. You feel bad for them because it's so much easier now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I liked about this fight scene is they really did a great job for the artist. It was a smart move. They would cut in really tight so that you wouldn't have to spin the whole robot around and make it stay in perspective.
Mm.
Especially when you're like the acid is dissolving a wing or a forehead or something.
I wanted to ask Stephen what he thought. There's this, like when Great Mazinger is sort of killing the Sentoju, the last one, he uses a weapon called the Razor Boomerang. And he pulls the emblem off of his chest and he throws it and he splits the Sentoju in half. But they kind of reverse, they break the 180 rule of he's on the left side of the screen and he throws it. And then the boomerang, it comes from the other direction. And it's a little off at first, but you're like, hey, it's a boomerang. It's supposed to, spin around and go the other way.
Right.
Well, I imagine that's probably what it certainly could have been a mistake, but it seems probably like it was an intentional use of that because of the nature of the weapon. Like that it's kind of that the razor ring or whatever, it sort of did travel around 180 degrees or more, so breast fire.
I love that. And also one of the things that you don't really see as much anymore is the old school watercolor technique, right? Just the analog version of things. Like that's a watercolor painting done with that classic throwing salt on the wet paint. Like that's just, it's just old school. It's old school art.
I love the crazy colors in there too. Like it's definitely sort of impressionistic a little bit with just the greens and the purples. I guess there are times where you, like near the ocean, you might get some green in the sky, but
look at the beautiful palette of this drawing.
Yeah. And the other thing too, which is worth saying, is a lot of the base for Mazinger Z is set at the foot of Mount Fuji, and there's all this nature surrounding it. And I have to think that is by design, because drawing fight scenes with buildings is a friggin' nightmare.
It's a pain in the butt. Well, I mean, this is a good little segue to. So not only, Tom, are you an expert and a toy collector on the whole super robot genre in and of itself, you have drawn a Super Robot comic.
Yes, I have. Do you have? Did you get the PDF of the preview for issue 2?
I did. I haven't had a chance to read that one yet, but I read the first one, and then I also got the blank cover that you sent me, and I drew you this, which I sent back.
Ooh,
nice.
There you go.
Jumbo Titan X.
Yep.
So Tom has been coming to Drink and Draw forever, and Tom is dedicated. He goes to tons of figure drawing classes in LA, which is one of the things I miss most about LA. But then
it's really incredible.
Yeah, it's a fantastic learning.
Can we talk about life drawing a little bit?
And his friends. Jeff misses his friends too.
I do. Yeah, Tom, please talk about because that's where you and we hang out often at the Gallery Girls.
Exactly. And well, let me back up, and I promise I'll get back on theme.
Sure.
I'm a comedian, and there's sort of a dialogue about stand-up comedy over the last few years, about stand-up comedy in colleges, where there's a lot of controversy. People say that college audiences are too sensitive, and Seinfeld says, "Oh, I won't play at colleges anymore." And on the other side, people will say like, "Oh, it's not that. A lot of the people performing at colleges are these regressive hacks." And it's an interesting conversation. In a way, they're probably both right. But the point that I want to make is that there is nothing better for stand-up comedy than full-time comedy clubs that are right next to colleges. That is so crucial to like just good comedy in general, because so much of stand-up comedy is like looking at a piece of paper and saying, should I do this, or what's going to go over, or sizing up the crowd. And
Tom, I imagine standing up in front of a crowd with a piece of paper is probably not a very good recipe for stand-up comedy.
I mean, you're standing, you're before you go on, right. Should I do this bit or this bit? Right. Is a big part of it. And just to have the permission to say it's okay to be smart here means so much. Like it's very difficult to describe, but so many times you cross off bits that you're going to do or ideas that you're going to explore because you just don't think that the audience will get it or appreciate it. And that really hurts you. And I was really lucky when I went to the art school at the University of Michigan, and there was a full-time comedy club right on campus. It was called the Main Street Comedy Showcase at the time. It's now called the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase. And then there was also something that was on campus called Laugh Track, which was every other Wednesday. And it was such an amazing environment for comedy. And a lot of talent came out of that. And part of my point is LA is surprisingly a very bad place for comedy. Everyone is kind of sort of caught up with their own careers. They all moved to LA to make it themselves. And it's not incredibly welcoming. And there's a lot of shows that you go to that are just, 30 other comedians, and they're all waiting to go on. And when you're trying to get ready for something, it can be very difficult, but it's a really tough situation in LA. And, when you move to LA to become a comedian, it really can be an assault on your confidence as a comedian. And it's really painful to feel your act sort of withering in its might. And that's, kind of what the road is for. So that's kind of an unexpected thing. People assume LA, comedy, that's where it's at. But, colleges and comedy are a great thing. But the reason I bring that up is, surprisingly, Los Angeles is an incredible place for art. And we were talking about gallery, and part of that is Drink and Draw. I mean, Drink and Draw, it was so incredible, and it's so like there's two things about Drink and Draw. You could go there and say, I don't want to talk to anyone. I want to sit in the corner and I want to work on this piece of art, and that's not odd at all. It's not like, what's up with that guy? You can just draw. Some people are going to go there, not draw at all, and just be social and talk to people. And that's fine as well. And everything in between those two is completely acceptable and fun. It's not, Drink and Draw was just so much fun, so encouraging, and such a wonderful environment. And then related to that is just the life drawing scene in Los Angeles is phenomenal. It has to be by far the best in the world. It's incredible how good life drawing is here.
Well, there's so many different, I mean, the Gallery Girls are amazing, and they hold lots of events, but then they aren't the only ones. There's tons of other people doing life drawing classes or life drawing workshops all over the place in LA. And Tom, don't you go like almost every other night?
I right now, especially when I was working on my comic and dealing with this other stuff, I'd like to go more.
I wonder if maybe I'm just seeing it through my own lens. Like, is the life drawing so dominant because of the animation industry? Because the sheer volume of visual artists in LA is so high that the demand to want to do.
I think there's a correlation.
I guess it's two things, right? Maybe it's like on the demand side, you've got probably the largest concentration of visual artists, in terms of when you take into account the animation industry and all other artistic industries here.
Sure.
And then in terms of models, you might, from the entertainment, film and TV and music industry, as well as fashion and art, like there also just might be, the largest concentration of people that would want to come and be models as well.
But it's not just that there's a lot of, people who want to be models. The models here are incredible. They're really excellent at doing this. I'll give you sort of well, first of all, I just want to say there's a lot of great male models in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
But like the female models seem to get a lot of the attention, and it's really easy to misconstrue that as sort of the male gaze, being a part of that. But I just feel like, we say rugged good looks for a reason, because you can draw, masculinity in a number of different ways, and it's kind of harder to mess up than feminine beauty. And
it's a lot easier to draw a guy.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's just way easier. You can be way less precise with your lines, and you way less concise with your lines.
Yes. And I mean, that's why someone like it's worth like Naoki Urasawa, the great manga artist. He did this thing. He's so good at drawing. It's easy to draw handsome. It's hard to draw pretty. Mm-hmm. And he draws pretty men so damn well. There's in Monster, the main villain, the monster is called Johan, and he draws him so pretty and so beautifully, and he's so talented. It's really insane how good he is. But the models here, it's not just that they're pretty; they're really good at modeling. Like,
yeah,
there was like sometimes who the models are, and you go there, and sometimes you don't. And I went to one in North Hollywood, and they say, okay, so tonight our model is a porn star. And you're like, what? Okay. And you Google on your phone, and yes, she is. And I have to say, she was actually pretty bad at modeling, like, because this isn't what she does, and I had to take a picture. It's just like, you're not going to hold that pose for 10 minutes. What are you thinking? And
well, yeah, I mean, especially Jen and the other Gallery Girls are amazing at just having great poses and great costumes and creating a great event where you feel as though you're learning and being able to express art and practice art and all of that. But they are also really good at inspiring you to want to be a better artist.
Absolutely. There's you look around at the room, and everyone is trying really hard, like no one's phoning it in. It really, like, there's this model, Haley Schott, and she, Jennifer had her for some online thing, and she was really curvy, and you're drawing her and you're thinking, you know what, this looks like a Frank Frazetta girl. Mm-hmm. And then like a couple weeks later, she's putting on her own thing, and it's a Frazetta theme. And you're like, oh, okay, she gets it. And she studied a bunch of Frazetta poses and she had daggers and all this accoutrements, and she did one outside, and you're like, okay, she gets it. She's done her part, and then you're holding your pencil and you're saying, now all I have to do is be as good as Frank Frazetta. It's really, it's not a fun experience.
Sure. Yeah. So all that being said, you've been working really hard in the last few years to become a better artist. And one of the things you were doing is you've been working on this comic for a really long time.
Absolutely.
And you wrote it, you drew it, you lettered it and colored it all yourself.
Yes. It's a Herculean task to create a comic book. Like anyone that you see in Artist Alley or the indie section of a comic book convention, you can not like their work. The one thing that you can't say is that they're all talk, because if they put out a comic book, that, give them a round of applause.
Right.
There's so much. What I like about it, though, in like being in complete control, is just there's so many different like sizes of ideas that you can have. You can have an idea for a panel, or you can have an idea for a line of dialogue, or you can have an idea for a color, or an onomatopoeia. It's just, big ideas, small ideas are all sort of welcome in any order that you choose to, or that your muse presents them to you.
Right. Following, like there's so much to making a comic. I think that it's especially if you're doing all the jobs. Yeah. I think it's difficult for anyone who's never tried it to even. Jones and I've been making comics together since we were 15, and it's there's
certainly a beautiful thing about like say. I guess now with the technology, it's probably easier than it's ever been. But like say if you want to go out and make an independent movie, even if you're shooting it on your phone. And you're not limited by the technology, you still, you're direct, you still need actors, there's so many things you need. And that's certainly a beautiful thing about comics, is that one person can actually do all the jobs, and put it out themselves.
Especially digitally, this first issue I did on paper and then I colored it digitally. The second issue is all on Procreate.
Right on.
It's awesome. So much that you can take, you can steal time. Like digital art allows you to steal time in that you can bring your iPad with you and you got a few minutes, you can get something done. If you feel like working in this part of your house rather than this part of your house, that matters, and that can have an impact on your mindset as you're working. And I also, for Jumbo Titan X, for my comic, I am trying to make a toy of the robot. And, I learned 3D programming. And there's stuff that you can do online. The program is online. It's not connected to one computer or wherever you download the software.
I gotta draw and Procreate on my iPad more, because it's actually my daughter that started mastering it that made me go like, oh, I need to draw in there more. But when I think about, so often like with storyboarding in Toon Boom, I'm kind of locked into doing it at my desk, at my Cintiq, in one position. And so when you're putting in just really crazy long days, just your body itself gets so tired in a way that, like if you're sitting there on your iPad, you could do it in a chair, you could do it on the couch, you could do it on a bed,
you can do it at the park,
Right.
Exactly. Like you can be constantly changing the position you're in, and thus, going a long way to eliminate that repetitive motion.
Well, I'm sold.
But with learning like a program like Tinkercad, is been really useful for me, because I can do it at home or I could do it at work when I've got some time. Just go to the website and build anything from Jumbo Titan X that I want. Like, in issue 2 that I sent you, they're fighting in a city. I built the city in Tinkercad and then traced over it. And then like, I can draw that city from any angle I want.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't have to figure out like, okay, how would this tower look if I'm looking at it this way?
when I did a sci-fi book a few years ago called Born Home, and I built all the spaceships in SketchUp so that I could see them from any angle, and with the tools, the camera tools, you just print them up and then you can trace them off. You always have an accurate representation of your design, and you can spin it in space. And like when you're destroying a city, it's way easier to have a model of it.
Exactly.
Tom, did you build your robot in Tinkercad too?
Yes.
I've been
3D printed it.
Oh, because I'm on a CG show now at DreamWorks. Actually, I can talk about it now because they announced it. So I'm on this new Kung Fu Panda show at DreamWorks, and it's been like such a great like revelation of they've built all these .obj files of all of the characters so that you can just like open them up and spin them around, and so to be able to be like on model and look at like, wait, what does Poe's head look like from above? You know, it's made me be like, man, I would love to get some slightly more realistic human, men and women .objs to be able to spin around and use in the same way. You know?
And you don't have to, like when you're using 3D to stay on model with a robot, I can just, I don't have to like take a screen grab, put it into Photoshop, put it on its own layer in Procreate, and then trace over it. I can just position it the way that I want for the image and just use it as reference and just draw from it.
Yeah, it's like having someone model for you, which is what, that's Jeff and I basically spent the 90s posing for Polaroid shots, Scott, our other co-host, Scott Kolins, basically, at some point, Jeff, we should actually do an episode. So Jeff drew this amazing comic that I helped do some finished pencils on, and Dan inked. It's Blood Wolf versus Supreme, and basically Scott was Blood Wolf and I was Supreme. And we should do like a side-by-side comparison of like the photo reference and the drawings or something.
Right, just to see that why the side, like often you had to wear a towel as the cape.
I loved wearing it. I love being Supreme is I guess in a way like Henry Cavill's Superman is kind of Supreme, where it just like you just at any moment you might just incinerate people with your heat vision.
Yeah, the analog stuff. All right, so Tom, we're getting close to wrapping up. I wanted to cover a few more.
Sure. Can you put up the main thing? I want to cover the events that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be. So that's this is sort of in reverse order. On April 9th, the Wicked Comic-Con. This is the first one. This is run by the people who used to do the Boston Comic-Con.
Okay.
And they got bought out by Fan Expo, and the no-compete clause sort of expired, and they're able to do their own convention now. But this is really focused on comic books. This is not like entertainment guests at all. And they're, go to the website, check them out. They're adding stuff. They're guests all the time. But I'm really excited to be a part of it and go back to Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. And then I'm doing a signing in my hometown, the comic book in my hometown, on Tuesday the 5th. Do you have that image? At Bedrock Comics on Route 9. My friend, who also created a comic book, Cliff Snyder, he has a comic book called Dino Sewer, which is very beautiful and well done. And he'll be with me as well.
Cool.
And then before that, I'm going to be in New York for a few days. And Stand Up New York is a really great club. And I'll be there Saturday night on the 10 p.m. show. I really love the acoustics of that club. It's wonderful, and the people who run it are top notch.
And are you going to be doing a lot of? I know that I've listened to a lot of your comic book material. Are you going to be doing comic book type stuff or less?
I don't. Probably not. I've been getting stuff ready, but I don't anticipate like a lot of sort of geek-friendly audience members at the show. I suspect the people that are going to be there are just people who want to see comedy that night.
Gotcha.
But I won't. I'll throw some stuff in for sure. But I have been getting the set ready, and I'm excited to be there.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to read the second issue. I loved the first issue. I thought it was really impressive. I really for someone who's never done a comic book before, the fact that you did, I mean, not only was it impressive that you did it, but you did it very well, and you told a great story with really interesting characters. And I mean, I wanted the second issue.
Well, you've got it in your inbox.
Yep.
So I mean, you've got, well, that's another thing. The Wicked Comic Con, I did print up 2,000 copies of the first 11 pages of Jumbo Titan X issue 2, and that will be handed out to anyone who attends the convention.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. And for anyone who wants to order a copy and check out Tom's various sites, they're all down in the description box. Right. So please go ahead and get Tom's comic and check out Tom if you're anywhere near this. Go see a stand-up. Tom and I talked about a lot of things during our time doing Drink and Draw, and one of the ones that we always kept coming back to is how storytelling is the same whether you're doing stand-up comedy or comic books. Like the goals and some of the same tools and the way you frame, like just the way you compose a scene are often very similar. And it's so Tom's great.
Yeah, my mom was a professional storyteller, and so in my family, it's been long embedded to really respect storytelling.
You're a good raconteur. So what is, if everyone here, apart from this episode of Mazinger Z, what is your favorite that's available? Because I know some of this stuff is hard to find. What would you say that your favorite thing that people should see?
Well, Go Nagai is more Mazinger Z creation. His partner was a guy named Ken Ishikawa, and he created a lot of the Kikaiju in Mazinger Z. But he was really sort of the driving creative force in Getter Robo and Getter Robo G. I'm a big fan of Getter Robo G. I watched it as a kid, and with older anime, you can find it online. You got to look. You'll probably deal with a fair amount of pop-ups, but episodes of Getter Robo G. The final 3 episodes of Getter Robo G, they're fighting a robot that is my all-time favorite design.
Is it even cooler than this giant shark?
Yes, it is.
I think that's my favorite. My favorite is that, like, we don't have a picture of it, but then the giant shark flies out of the water and then slices buildings in half with its fins.
And then spits acid as well.
And it spits acid. It's terrifying. It's really I have to say that I was not familiar with Mazinger Z other than seeing him in passing. And now I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. It's addictive. Well, you're not alone.
Right.
It really captured the world in the 70s, and it still holds the fascination of a lot of people.
And then the relatively recent movie, Mazinger Z Infinity, is that what it is?
Yes, which I went to go see in the theater with Chris Burnham.
Oh, right on. Chris, another fantastic artist and drink and draw person.
Yep.
That film is amazing. Great action, great robot design.
For sure.
All right, gentlemen. That
Gentlemen, to Dr. Evil. Dr. Hell, excuse me.
That was a lot of fun. And let me see, what should we? Here we go.
Oh, well done, Jeff. Well played.
Let me ask, what are you, before we missed the thing you're supposed to do, what are you drinking?
Oh, sadly, I was just drinking water.
Jeff's just hydrating tonight.
Yeah.
And my parents came to town and drank all of my Coca-Cola, so I had to resort to, not a terrible thing, the Australian Boondocks ginger beer. Delicious. No
what
caffeine.
About you, Tom? Even though your camera didn't work, I heard tinkling in a glass.
Sure, yes. I'm not drinking what I hope to be drinking. I went to the New Beverly Cinema, and they had something called Swamp Pop, which was praline cream soda.
Oh.
And it was incredible, and I became obsessed with it, and there was only one store in LA that had it.
What is the store?
It was Gelson's in North Hollywood had it. But then they stopped carrying it, and I looked online, and it doesn't look like it's made anymore. And it's a real crime because it was the most delicious soda by far that I've ever had. So I know, Stephen, you like Mexican Coke a lot of the time,
I do.
on these episodes.
I do.
And the reason that Mexican Coke is so popular is because Mexico didn't have the embargo from Cuba for sugar, so that Mexican Coke has real cane sugar, whereas U.S. Coke has high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
Yeah. But that is not true of just Mexican Coke. It's all sodas. So I'm drinking. There's a soda called Mundet, Mundet, which makes apple soda, which is delicious. But then they have a green apple soda, which is even better, and that's what I have.
Wow.
Oh, interesting. All right, I'll check that out.
All those things. Wait, I want to back up. Is that why they went to New Coke? Because of an embargo from Cuba?
Yes. The U.S. used to have sugar Coke, and then it switched to high fructose corn syrup for political reasons. So high fructose corn syrup is in Nebraska. Cane sugar. I mean, there's still cane sugar now is around because it's so popular because it became a thing, But the switch was made sort of seamlessly for decades.
Well, I know that I have family lives in Hawaii, and they stopped growing sugarcane on Maui, and so that's just not happening anymore. Because I think a lot of the new populace didn't enjoy the burning of the cane fields every year.
Yeah.
So
son of a bitch.
I know, right? All right. Tom, that was great. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Steve, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for. This is the end.
I really thought Stephen was going to have to play the piano, like when guests would run too long on the Tonight
Show. Right, no playing out.
I was just going to come out like a drunken Ed McMahon and start throwing punches.
Oh God, that was good times. God, I love these designs. I just can't get over how imaginative this was, even 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Awesome, Tom. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, gang. Take care. Have a nice evening.